She hid his twin children, until the Lycan king identified her during the pack meeting. In a small village nestled at the edge of the forest, where the trees whispered secrets older than the mountains themselves, she lived a quiet life. Her home, a modest cottage with smoke curling from its chimney, seemed ordinary to outsiders. But inside, Alara's life was anything but ordinary. She raised twin children in secret, their laughter and small footsteps echoing softly in rooms filled with warmth and care. The children were a constant reminder of a past she had tried to bury, a past tied to the Lycan king, Kale. The very mention of his name sent a shiver down her spine. Not out of fear of him as a man, but fear of what he represented: power, dominance, and a life that had once threatened to consume her entirely. Yet the children carried his blood, his strength, and a spark that could not be hidden for long. Every morning, Alara woke before dawn. She crept through the cottage, ensuring that the children were asleep, that the windows were locked, and that no signs of their true heritage remained. She had learned long ago that the world was not kind to those who crossed paths with the supernatural. Even whispers of connection to the Lycan king could invite danger, scrutiny, or worse. But this morning was different. A message had arrived from the village council, one that filled her heart with dread. The pack meeting was approaching, and everyone with ties to the Lycan king's domain was expected to attend. Alara's heart thumped in her chest as she read the notice over and over. She could feel the cold grip of panic settle in her stomach. If Kale were to recognize her, if he were to see the children, everything she had built would collapse. Yet she could not flee forever. The forest could hide her, the village could protect her, but she could not escape the pull of fate. That evening, she told the children a story, her voice soft but trembling. Once, there was a great wolf who ruled the forests. Brave and strong, he protected his own, but some secrets were too heavy to carry alone. Remember, my little ones, bravery is not always about fighting, it is about surviving. The twins, unaware of the full truth of their heritage, listened with wide eyes. Their innocent curiosity was like a mirror to Alara's own heart, reflecting a longing she could not voice. She kissed their foreheads, tucked them into bed, and stared out the window into the darkening forest. The wind whispered against the trees as if carrying secrets meant only for her. The journey to the pack meeting the next day was fraught with tension. Alara walked through the forest path, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders, her children's hands held firmly in hers. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl made her heart race. She knew Kale's presence would be like a shadow over the gathering, his aura commanding attention even before he spoke. When they arrived, the village square was already filled with people from surrounding lands, wolves in human form, their eyes reflecting a primal intelligence, their movements poised and careful. At the center stood the Lycan king, Kale. He was tall, his shoulders broad, his gaze like molten silver under the dim moonlight. Even from a distance, he exuded power that was impossible to ignore. Alara froze, her heart hammering in her chest. She had seen him before, of course, in dreams, in memories that refused to fade. But seeing him now, alive, present, commanding the room, stirred emotions she had long suppressed: fear, desire, guilt, and a pull toward him she could neither explain nor resist. Kale's eyes scanned the crowd with precision, every movement calculated, every expression measured. Then, for a brief moment, they landed on her. Alara felt as if the world had stopped. Recognition flickered in his gaze, though he made no move to approach yet. It was a subtle acknowledgement, a spark of memory in a sea of power, and it made her knees weak. She guided the children behind her, keeping them close, whispering words of comfort that barely masked her own trembling. "Stay quiet," she urged. "Stay calm." But the twins, unaware of the danger, laughed softly as they marveled at the gathering. Their joy, innocent and untainted, was a stark contrast to the tension in the air, and Kale noticed. Even before he knew why, his instincts as a father stirred. There was something familiar in their eyes, something undeniable that tugged at the core of him. The council began the meeting, speaking of pack matters, boundaries, and ancient customs. Alara listened, her attention divided between keeping the children calm and watching Kale. Every word he spoke carried weight, every movement was precise and commanding. He was not just a king, he was a force of nature, a storm contained in human form. As the evening wore on, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Alara's anxiety grew with every passing moment. She knew that hiding forever was impossible. The truth would surface, and when it did, it would change everything. And then it happened. One of the twins, a boy with bright eyes and an uncontainable curiosity, wandered too close to Kale. His small hand reached out, almost instinctively, toward the man who had unknowingly shaped his very existence. Alara's heart stopped. She rushed forward, but it was too late. Kale's eyes, sharp and piercing, fell on the child. Time seemed to stretch. In that moment, recognition struck him like lightning. He froze, his body taut with a mixture of shock and something else, something deep, primal, and unspoken. The twins' innocent laughter echoed in the hall, but to Kale it was a revelation, a jolt of truth he could not ignore. Alara stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. She had hidden this reality for so long, yet here it was, revealed in an instant by a child's innocence. Her mind raced, anger, fear, and longing tangled into a knot she could not unravel. Kale's gaze hardened, but there was no immediate movement. His presence loomed over her, magnetic and intimidating. The council paused in mid-speech, sensing the tension, feeling the shift in the room. All eyes were drawn to the pair, woman and king, mother and father, secrets and truths converging in the same space. Alara wanted to flee, to hide, to erase this moment before it could solidify into reality. But she could not move. Her legs refused to obey, her mind paralyzed by the intensity of his recognition. Kale stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured, like a predator assessing its surroundings. And then he spoke, his voice low, smooth, carrying both command and disbelief. Alara. The sound of her name on his lips sent a shiver through her entire being. It was not just recognition, it was accusation, longing, pain, and an echo of a love that had never truly died. Alara swallowed, her throat dry. "Kale," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet it carried across the hall, drawing every gaze. The twins clung to her, sensing the tension but unaware of its full meaning. Kale's eyes softened ever so slightly as he looked at them, and something inside him shifted. He recognized them, not just as children but as part of himself, part of a past he had lost, and perhaps a future he could not yet imagine. The council murmured, confusion spreading like wildfire. Secrets that had been buried for years threatened to surface all at once. Alara's mind raced with possibilities, with dangers, with the fear that everything she had protected would be swept away in a single moment. Kale's gaze returned to her, intense and unyielding. "You hid them from me," he said, his voice calm but edged with an emotion she could not name. Alara met his eyes, her own filled with a mix of defiance, fear, and longing. "I had to," she whispered. "I could not let you find them, not like this, not under the eyes of the pack, not under the shadow of the curse." Kale's jaw tightened, and he took another step closer, his presence almost overwhelming. The twins instinctively moved behind her, sensing the invisible wall of tension between the two adults. "You've been living in shadows," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "But the shadows cannot hide the truth forever." Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but some part of her, a part she had buried deep, wanted to reach for him, to close the distance and reclaim a past they both had lost. Yet fear held her back, as it always had. And then, as the meeting continued in uneasy silence, a single thought took hold of Alara's mind. The moment of reckoning had arrived. She could not hide the truth any longer. The Lycan king knew, the children were exposed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hall seemed to grow darker, the shadows longer, as if the forest itself held its breath. And as Kale's piercing gaze remained fixed upon her, Alara realized with a mixture of dread and longing that her life, and the lives of her children, were about to change forever. The hall of the Lycan pack was vast and silent, lit only by torches that flickered against ancient stone walls. Shadows danced across the faces of those assembled wolves in human form, their eyes reflecting the silver glow of the moonlight streaming through high windows. Every movement, every glance was calculated, yet the tension was unmistakable. Alara's heart pounded as she stood frozen in the center of the hall. The twins clung to her hands, sensing the weight of the moment even if they did not understand it. Kale, the Lycan king, moved toward her with quiet purpose. His silver eyes, sharp and commanding, seemed to see through every secret she had hidden, every lie she had told herself to survive. The air between them was thick, electric, like the calm before a storm. Kale stopped a few paces away, and for a long moment neither spoke. He studied her as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the memories he had buried deep inside. The twins, bright-eyed and innocent, stared up at him with curiosity, unaware of the danger that hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Finally, Kale spoke. His voice was low, steady, but there was an edge of emotion beneath it, anger, disbelief, and something softer, something buried. "These are mine," he said, and his eyes swept over the twins. Alara's chest tightened. She had known this moment would come, but hearing him say the words made her feel exposed, vulnerable in a way she had not felt in years. "Yes," she whispered, "they are yours. I had no choice but to hide them." The council murmured behind them, confusion and curiosity spreading through the hall like wildfire. Whispers of the king's children, hidden, unknown, sent ripples across the assembly. Some leaned forward, eager to witness the unfolding drama. Others avoided his gaze, wary of what his reaction might be. Kale's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "And you thought hiding them would protect them?" he asked, his tone calm but edged with steel. "From what? From me?" Alara's eyes filled with unshed tears. "From the curse," she said softly. "From the pack, from everything. I could not risk losing them, not again." Kale's eyes darkened, a storm brewing in their depths. Memories of the past, the love they had shared, the moments torn apart by fate, and the curse that had shadowed their lives, flooded him. He saw the pain in her eyes, the love she bore quietly for him and the children, and the guilt she carried like a heavy cloak. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming yet strangely comforting. "You have lived in shadows for too long," he said. "The truth cannot remain hidden forever. You have denied me my life, my children." Alara's hands trembled as she gripped the twins. "I did what I had to," she said. "I had to protect them. You were bound by a curse. I could not risk them being taken or hurt because of it." Kale's expression softened, though his eyes remained fierce. He crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to the children's level. "Who told you of the curse?" he asked gently. His voice carried no accusation, only curiosity and a subtle warmth. Alara shook her head. "No one," she replied. "I told them nothing. They know only love, not fear. I promised them a safe life." The twins looked up at Kale, their innocent faces a mirror of his own. The resemblance was uncanny, the same sharp eyes, the same delicate features. Even in the quietest of moments, their presence tugged at his heart in ways he had never imagined. Kale's hand hovered above them, unsure if he could reach out, unsure if he should. "Children," he said softly, almost to himself, "I never knew that you existed." Alara felt a lump in her throat. The pain in his voice mirrored her own, the regret, the longing, the love that neither had dared to speak aloud for years. And yet, the weight of the council's eyes pressed down on them. Every whisper, every glance reminded her that their secret was no longer hers to control. Kale straightened, turning his gaze to the assembly. "These children are mine," he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. and they will be protected regardless of the shadows in which they were raised. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Some bowed their heads in respect, recognizing the authority in his declaration. Others hesitated, aware of the complexities of the situation, yet no one dared to challenge the king. Alara felt a mix of relief and fear. Kale's words should have been comforting, but they carried a weight she could not ignore. His recognition of the children was only the beginning. There would be questions, challenges, and a reckoning she had tried so hard to avoid. Kale turned back to her, his gaze intense. "Alara," he said, his voice softer now but no less commanding. "We must speak. Alone." Her heart raced. Alone with him meant leaving the safety of the crowd, exposing herself and the twins to whatever emotions and truths lay buried between them. Yet there was no avoiding it. The moment had come, whether she was ready or not. They moved to a quiet corner of the hall, away from prying eyes. The twins clung to her hands, sensing the tension but unaware of its full meaning. Once they were out of sight, Kale finally allowed himself to speak freely. "Why did you hide them?" he asked, his tone a mixture of curiosity and accusation. "Do you know what I have felt, what I have endured, not knowing that part of me lived in secret?" Alara swallowed, her voice trembling. "I was afraid," she admitted, "afraid of losing them. Afraid of losing you again. The curse, it has a way of destroying everything it touches. I could not risk it." Kale's eyes softened, but the storm within them remained. "And yet, by hiding them, you made me suffer all the same. You chose fear over trust." "I did what I believed was right," Alara said, her eyes meeting his. "I loved them, I still do. I love them more than anything. And I love you too, even if it is dangerous to say it." Kale's breath caught, and for a moment the silence between them was profound. The hall around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the echo of their shared past and the weight of the present. "You should not have carried this burden alone," he said finally, his voice low and measured. "We could have faced it together." Alara shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It was never that simple," she whispered. "You were bound by the curse. I could not risk bringing them into a world where their father could not protect them. I had to survive for them." Kale's hand brushed against hers, hesitant but deliberate. The touch was electric, sending a shiver through her entire being. "And now," he asked softly, "now that the truth is out?" Alara looked down at the twins, their small hands holding hers tightly. "Now I do not know," she admitted. "Now we must navigate this together. But I am scared, Kale, scared of losing them, of losing you, of losing everything again." Kale's gaze softened and he crouched slightly to meet their eyes. "I will not lose them," he promised. "And I will not lose you. Not again." The twins giggled softly, sensing the change in tension, the shift from fear to a cautious hope. Their laughter was a balm, a reminder of the life that could exist beyond shadows and secrets. But even as Kale spoke, a shadow lingered in the corners of the hall. The curse, the whispers of the pack, and the power struggles that had always defined his reign were never far away. Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The moment of revelation had passed, but the challenges ahead would test them in ways neither could yet imagine. Kale stood, extending his hand toward her. "We will face this together," he said. "As a family, but we must be careful. The pack will have questions. The world will have questions, and there are forces that will not be pleased to see us united." Alara nodded, her heart pounding. "Together," she echoed. As they returned to the assembly, the twins safely held between them, the weight of the moment pressed down on Alara. She had faced the king, revealed her secret, and survived the storm of recognition. Yet she knew that Kale's presence, his authority, and the truth of their children's heritage had only begun to change their lives. The hall was silent, all eyes upon them, and Alara felt the tension coil like a serpent around her heart. This was a world of kings, curses, and ancient forces, one where love and power were never separate, where every decision carried consequences that could last lifetimes. and as Kale led them to a place of honor within the hall, his gaze never leaving hers, Alara understood a simple, terrifying truth. The past had caught up with them, and the future was a path they would have to navigate together, in the shadow of the Lycan King, the forest beyond. The pack hall was alive with whispers of wind through the ancient trees, and the silver moon hung low, casting a cold, luminous glow on the path ahead. Alara held tightly to the twins' hands, their small fingers entwined in hers, as Kale walked beside her with a quiet, commanding presence. The council had agreed to let them retreat from the assembly temporarily. Kale insisted they must speak, plan, and understand the significance of the twins' arrival before revealing more to the pack. The forest, dark and untouched, offered temporary sanctuary, yet Alara felt a tension in every shadow, every rustle of leaves. Danger had a way of hiding in even the most serene places. Alara glanced at Kale. The man she had once loved, feared, and longed for stood beside her with an intensity that seemed to radiate from his very being. He had recognized the twins immediately and had claimed them as his own, yet his emotions were tangled, a mixture of awe, anger, longing, and protectiveness. It was exhausting just to watch him, to feel the force of his presence pressing against the fragile calm of her heart. "Are you sure we can trust this path?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the night breeze. Kale's eyes scanned the darkness, alert, every muscle poised for action. "I trust it," he replied simply, though the taut line of his jaw betrayed his own unease. "The forest knows the old ways. It will guide us if we remain vigilant." The twins giggled softly as they followed, unaware of the weight of the moment. Their innocence was a balm, yet it was also a reminder of the stakes. They were more than children. They were symbols of hope, of the bond between Alara and Kale, and a challenge to the forces that had long shaped their lives. As they walked deeper into the forest, memories stirred in Kale's mind, memories of Alara, of love once forbidden, of a curse that had separated them. He had tried to bury these feelings, to focus solely on his role as king. Yet now, with the twins' presence, the past refused to remain hidden. Every glance at Alara, every small laugh of the children, drew him closer to a truth he had long resisted. He could not deny his love, nor could he ignore his duty as their father. Alara sensed his gaze, the silent pull of his attention, and felt a mix of fear and longing. Her heart ached with memories of stolen moments, whispered promises, and nights when the world had seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Yet she could not forget the pain, the curse, the danger that had always lurked at the edges of their lives. They reached a clearing, ancient stones arranged in a circle at its center. The air shimmered faintly, as if holding its breath, and the scent of wildflowers mingled with the earthiness of the forest floor. Kale paused, turning to Alara. "This is where we must begin," he said. "The ruins hold answers. The curse, the past, and the path to protecting our children, everything is here." Alara studied the stones, feeling a shiver of recognition. They were symbols of power, of old magic, and of secrets that had been buried long before she or Kale were born. "What must we do?" she asked. Kale's gaze softened as he looked at her. "We must trust each other," he said simply. "The ritual to protect the twins and uncover the truth requires unity. If we falter, the consequences could be severe." Alara nodded, her fingers brushing against his. The touch was electric, familiar, and filled with unspoken emotions. I'm ready," she whispered. Kale allowed himself a small, rare smile. "Then we begin." The ritual required focus, courage, and a willingness to face the deepest fears within themselves. They stood in the center of the circle, Kale holding the twins close while Alara traced the ancient symbols with her fingers. The moonlight caught their forms, bathing them in silver light. As the ritual began, whispers of old magic stirred in the air. Shadows shifted, and the wind carried voices long silent. Kale and Alara moved in harmony, their trust growing with each step. The twins laughed softly, their joy innocent yet powerful, as if their very existence fueled the magic surrounding them. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. A cold presence surged from the shadows, a being bound to the curse, drawn by the twins' emergence. It was neither fully visible nor entirely tangible, yet its intent was clear: to test, to challenge, to threaten the fragile bond forming between the family. Alara's breath caught. "Kale," she whispered, fear tightening her chest. Kale's eyes narrowed, silver pupils glowing faintly in the moonlight. He shifted, positioning himself between the threat and the children, his aura radiating authority and protection. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice calm but firm. "Do not fear, trust me." The being advanced, a shadow of swirling darkness and power, circling them with intent. Alara felt the tension coil around her like a serpent, but she focused on Kale, on the ritual, on the children. They were the center, the heart of what mattered. Kale raised his hand, and a pulse of silver energy shot from him, forming a protective barrier around the trio. The shadow hissed, retreating slightly, then surged forward again. Kale's strength was undeniable, but the being was relentless, a test of their unity and courage. Alara joined him, her voice steady as she recited the words of the ritual. The symbols glowed under her touch, light weaving between her fingers and Kale's aura. The children giggled again, unaware of the danger, and their laughter seemed to strengthen the magic, pushing the darkness back. Minutes felt like hours, and Alara could feel the exhaustion building in her body, yet she refused to falter. Kale's presence beside her, steady and unwavering, gave her courage she had not known she possessed. Together, they channeled their love, their protection, and their hope into the circle. Finally, the shadow recoiled and vanished, leaving the forest silent once more. The ritual had succeeded, but the air was thick with the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The curse was not gone, only held at bay, and the forces that watched from the shadows would not rest. Kale lowered his hands, his chest heaving slightly from exertion. He looked at Alara, his expression a mixture of pride, relief, and unspoken longing. "You were remarkable," he said softly. "Fear could not sway you, courage guided you." Alara shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "We did it together," she said, "all of us." Kale glanced at the twins, their small faces glowing in the silver moonlight. "They are strong," he said, "stronger than I expected, and they will need guidance, love, protection." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. "I will protect them," she said fiercely, "no matter what comes." Kale's gaze lingered on her, intense and searching. "And I will stand by you," he said, "always." For a moment the forest seemed to hold its breath. The danger had passed, yet the tension between them remained, a mixture of longing, regret, and unspoken desire. They were bound together not just by love, but by fate, by the children, and by the forces that had shaped their lives. The twins, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, ran to them, laughing and tugging at their hands. Their innocence was a reminder of what was at stake, and a beacon of hope in the darkness. Alara knelt to their level, brushing hair from their faces. "We are safe for now," she whispered. Kale's eyes never left hers. "For now," he echoed, his voice carrying the weight of promise and warning. As they prepared to leave the clearing and return to the village, a distant howl echoed through the trees. It was a sound of warning, a signal that the pack and forces beyond were stirring. The twins clung to them, instinctively sensing the tension, and Alara felt her heart tighten. They moved quickly through the forest, shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Every step was measured, every sound amplified in the stillness. They could not afford mistakes. The world was watching, and not all who watched wished them well. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, where the village lights twinkled like stars against the dark earth. Alara exhaled, relief washing over her. But the moment of peace was fragile, temporary. She knew that the council would demand answers, that the pack would have questions, and that the forces stirred by the ritual would not remain dormant for long. Kale's hand brushed against hers as they entered the village, a silent reassurance. "We are stronger than the darkness," he said, "but it will test us again, and we must be ready." Alara nodded, her fingers tightening around his. "Together," she said. Kale glanced down at the twins, a rare softness in his expression. "Together," he echoed. But even as they moved toward safety, the shadows of the forest seemed to linger, watching, waiting. And Alara knew with a chill that the calm of the night was only temporary. Ancient forces, jealous and hungry, had been awakened. Their family, fragile, untested, was now in the path of powers that would challenge every bond they had fought to protect. The mountains rose like jagged teeth against the night sky, their peaks hidden in swirling mist. Alara clutched the twins' hands as she followed Kale along the narrow path. The air was sharp and cold, each breath visible in the silver glow of the moon. This was the stronghold of the Lycan king, a place where power and magic converged, where ancient curses lingered, and where destinies were forged or broken. The journey had been long and perilous. Even after the ritual in the forest, the shadow they had encountered had not vanished completely. Its presence followed them, unseen yet undeniable, whispering threats into the wind, a reminder that safety was never guaranteed. Kale led with unwavering focus, his silver eyes scanning the mountains for danger. Alara followed, matching his pace, her heart filled with both fear and determination. She had protected her children for so long, hidden them from a father who could have been their protector, but now she had no choice. Kale would be their strength, and she would fight to keep their family together. As they neared the stronghold, the air grew thick with magic. Symbols etched into the stone glowed faintly in the moonlight, casting ethereal patterns across the ground. The twins clutched her hands tightly, sensing the power that surrounded them, and for a moment, Alara allowed herself to marvel at their courage. Even in danger, they remained innocent, untainted by fear. "This is it," Kale said softly, his voice carrying both authority and tenderness. "The curse that has shadowed my life, it ends here, but the path will not be easy. The darkness will test every bond we have." Alara nodded, swallowing her fear. "We are ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. She looked down at the twins, their small faces determined and trusting. "For them, for us, we must be ready." The entrance to the stronghold was guarded by a circle of ancient stones, similar to those in the forest, but larger, more imposing. Kale approached the center, raising his hand. A pulse of silver energy radiated outward, and the air vibrated with power. The curse had been strong for centuries, a shadow that had haunted the Lycan bloodline, preventing them from fully claiming their destiny. But now, with the twins at their side, Kale could feel a shift, a chance for redemption. Alara stepped forward beside him, placing her hands on the stones. "We face it together," she said. Her voice, firm yet gentle, carried through the clearing, mingling with the hum of magic. "All of us as a family." The ritual began, slow and deliberate. Words older than memory slipped from their lips, calling on the forces of protection, courage, and love. The twins held their small hands in Kale's, their presence amplifying the energy, their innocence a key to breaking the shadow that had lingered for generations. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Shadows coalesced at the edges of the clearing, dark and oppressive. The being from the forest had returned, stronger, more focused, drawn by the twins' emerging power. It swirled around them, testing the strength of the family, probing for weaknesses. Alara's breath caught. Fear rose like a tide, but she forced herself to stand tall. Kale's hand rested over hers, grounding her, giving her the strength to face the darkness. "Focus," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We are one. The shadow cannot divide us." The being lunged forward, a surge of cold energy that threatened to shatter the circle. Kale's protective barrier flared, silver light clashing against shadow in a dazzling display. Alara joined him, chanting the ancient words with steady precision. Their voices intertwined, and the twins added their own, pure and untainted, creating a harmony of power that the shadow could not resist. Minutes stretched into eternity. Alara felt her strength waning, but Kale's presence, steady and unwavering, gave her courage. Their bond, the love, trust, and shared responsibility, was the true magic. It was not the words or the stones alone that held the shadow at bay, but the unity of their hearts. With a final surge, the light from their combined energy pierced the darkness. The shadow shrieked, recoiling, and then dissolved into nothingness. The air stilled, and the mountains seemed to exhale, releasing centuries of tension. The curse had been broken, not by power alone, but by love, trust, and sacrifice. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted, but a sense of peace settled over her. She looked at Kale, who knelt beside her, his chest heaving but his eyes calm. The twins, still holding their hands, laughed softly, sensing the end of the trial. Their joy was pure, unburdened by the shadows they had faced. Kale reached for Alara, lifting her chin gently so that their eyes met. "You were remarkable," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "Courage, love, you held everything together when I feared I could not." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not of fear. They were of relief, gratitude, and a long-suppressed love finally allowed to surface. "We did it together," she whispered. "All of us." Kale nodded, a rare softness in his expression. "All of us," he echoed, pressing his forehead lightly to hers. The bond they shared, forged in struggle and strengthened by love, radiated in the silver light of the moon. The twins, sensing the intimacy but unafraid, ran between them, their laughter a bridge between past and future. Kale scooped them up, holding them close. "You are safe now," he said, his voice tender yet strong. "I will protect you always." Alara smiled, placing her hand over his. "And we will protect each other," she said, "no matter what comes next." The mountains were silent now, the shadows lifted and the curse broken. But the night carried one last whisper, not of danger but of promise. The family had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, united and ready to embrace their future. Kale stood, holding the twins securely, and offered his hand to Alara. She took it, her fingers intertwining with his, and together they walked toward the stronghold. The air was crisp, the moonlight bathing them in silver, a blessing on what had been reclaimed. Inside the stronghold the council waited, but their questions and doubts were met not with fear, but with strength and unity. Kale introduced the twins, acknowledging them fully as heirs and as the heart of their family. The council, recognizing the power of love and courage that had protected them, bowed in respect. Alara felt a deep sense of relief. The secrets, the fear, and the shadows of the past had finally given way to truth and redemption. The children were safe, acknowledged, and loved. Kale's presence, once a source of tension and longing, had become a steadfast pillar of strength. Later, under the light of the full moon, Kale and Alara stood together on the balcony of the stronghold, the twins asleep in their arms. The wind carried the scent of the mountains, wildflowers, and the forest beyond. For the first time in years, there was a sense of peace. Kale turned to Alara, his gaze deep and unwavering. "We have faced the darkness," he said softly. "Together we are stronger than any curse, any shadow, any threat." Alara nodded, her heart full. "And we will continue to face it together," she replied. "As a family, always." Kale reached for her, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear. Only trust, love, and a bond forged in struggle and tempered by sacrifice. Their lips met, a gentle promise under the silver light, a vow that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them united. The twins stirred slightly, murmuring in their sleep, and Kale laughed softly, the sound rich and warm. "They are our hope," he said, "and we will protect that hope no matter the cost." Alara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "We are a family," she whispered, "and nothing can take that away." As the moon reached its peak, the shadows of the past finally fell behind them. The curse had been broken, the darkness faced, and the bonds of love and family strengthened. Yet in the silence of the mountains, a subtle reminder lingered. The world was vast, mysterious, and sometimes cruel, but together they would endure. And in that moment, beneath the silver glow of the moon, Ilara, Kale, and their children embraced their future, not as victims of fate, but as the authors of their own story, a tale of courage, love, and redemption that would echo through generations.